There we are.
Once again, we have a lot to get through, so we're going to dive straight into some quick follow-up.
Secret follow-up. Follow-up that I don't know about.
Secret follow-up that I've not told Ryan about yet. Right, so in the last episode, we were talking about... Right, make sure I get this right this time. We were talking about Minotaur, that Ryan pronounces Minotaur. And in the last episode, I confused myself, said Minotaur, thought that was a mistake, and corrected myself to Minotaur. And that correction was wrong. And so I'm just going to clarify the correct pronunciation. The correct pronunciation is Minotaur.
First of all, the irony. Second of all, you're wrong. It's still Minotaur.
That's fine. Like I'm okay to disagree. I'm just disappointed in myself for having, because it's been so long since we talked about these robots, and I confused myself about which one I was going with, and I just want to clarify for everyone to make my stance on this clear. It's Minotaur. It's how I've always said it.
You're drawing a line in the sand right here, right now.
I am. There are 4 lights.
That is not a reference I expected from you. And I do not dislike it. I thought your secret follow-up was going to be about... Well, I thought it would be Minotaur based, but about Minotaur Blacksmith and the last time we did it.
Oh, yeah. So we referenced brief... Well, when we talked about it, I thought that I'd protested the 3-3, and on listening back, I hadn't. And that's the way it goes. Human memory is rubbish. Don't trust it.
Well, that's... You're what I assumed was going to be gratuitous follow-up out of the way, so I put my own gratuitous follow-up in that now seems out of place. But I'm going to double down on it and just say that I've bought a pillar drill and I've never been happier.
Oh, dear. I'll tell you what, when we started this robot building stuff, I would not have expected you to be the person to, A, do brushless motors first, and then B, get a pillar drill first. It makes complete sense that that's what's happened. Like, you are in a much better position to be doing that kind of stuff than me at the moment, but it is just funny.
Yeah, I have a workspace, therefore I can fill it with stuff that I don't really need but want. That's how workspaces work. It's funny, I wasn't going to mention this until I picked up something that's been on my little sort of recording table for a week now that I just keep picking up and, like, smiling to myself, which is just a scrap of titanium that I managed to drill through. That's all it is. It's just an accurate 4mm hole that's in the place it was meant to be. I've got it in my hand now, and it just brings me joy.
Excellent. Imagine being able to put holes where you intend.
It's a greater luxury than you will ever know. You have coordination on your side. Hopefully, I'll finally get on with my stupid build that I'm planning this weekend, and the pillar drill is going to be integral to it.
Nice. I don't know what you've done with your microphone that I'm hearing you through, but you sound like you're underwater.
Oh, I think I just put my hand over it.
There we go.
Because it's on my phone and I'm hand holding that. And your recording setup is weird. So, with that, just pointless crap out the way. BattleBots news. Trailer. Air date. Other good things.
Yay.
So we had the whole field come out. Do you mind me mentioning that we sat down and tried to record an episode about it and it wasn't very good, so we stopped?
I mean, you've just mentioned it.
I mean, you have the power to cut it, but after show today, assuming you're still planning to do this, will be some edited highlights of that, plus some ones that we didn't get round to. Just the ones that we want to talk about.
Our cunning plan was to try and talk about every new robot in like a normal length episode of Spinnerproof. And I don't know why we thought that would work. I think we got less than halfway through in 2 hours and it was like, no, this isn't working.
Yeah, Robocast have done their version, which they do every year. It's a 4.5 hour podcast, as would have been 6.
Oh, dear.
Theirs is amazing, by the way, and well worth 4.5 hours of anyone's time. Robocast is always great. But boy, we did not have that level of stamina.
I mean, 6 hours of us would not be worth your time.
I mean, I'm amazed people kind of go with 1 and a bit. Of course, this one could end up being quite lengthy. We'll see how it goes.
Indeed.
I've still got 2.5 hours spare. Let's fill them, you know. But the bigger BattleBots news, I suppose, is that we have an air date. It's exactly what I was fearing, in that it's Thursday, the 3rd of December. Thursday does not feel like a good thing.
It does feel like a bit of a backseat day, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've heard theories that it's to avoid some key dates that they would have to skip an episode. Apparently Christmas is on a Thursday this year. Sorry, Christmas is on a Friday this year, so a Thursday would be avoiding it, but I'd be amazed if they put out a normal BattleBots episode on Christmas Eve. It feels a bit like Robot Wars going up against Blue Planet, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. Like, on the one hand, it doesn't, it can come out whatever day it wants in the week. It doesn't really affect me. I'm going to watch it when I get around to watching it regardless. But it is sort of in the wider sense of sort of like, what are they communicating by picking that day as the day for broadcast? It's sort of like, Thursday's a bit, I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what will happen?
I guess with it having been delayed, the scheduling in TV in general is probably a bit weird at the moment. I don't think this necessarily means as much as it might mean in another sort of timeline, I guess. But it is still a bit off to me, and also massively inconvenient, because I'm not like you. I can't wait to watch it. I have too many group chats going on where I will see spoilers. I am incapable of staying off of my phone during like lunch at work the next day and not seeing that stuff. So I'll be waking up pretty early on a Friday to watch it before I go to work. That's just unavoidable.
I mean, you say it's unavoidable. The difference in our approach to these things is astonishing. Are you familiar with the ability to mute conversations?
Yeah, but I also like being able to turn to those conversations like at my break and at my lunch for a bit of respite from my job. It's like the only escape I have. I think the difference is that I'm much more immersed in robot combat and robot combat content creation than you are, so it's much harder for me to avoid without just avoiding all of my fun and all of the people I enjoy talking to, which apparently doesn't involve you, so sorry about that.
Why do you make this podcast with me?
You were available. That's pretty much how it came about, isn't it? And now it's like I couldn't replace you because you do the website and the edit.
Yeah, you're stuck with me.
It makes it sound like you're my employee. That's totally not how this goes.
I've engineered the situation to make myself unfireable.
Is it bad that I just thought of ways that I could fire you? Or tried to think of ways I could fire you and failed?
I mean, you can fire me. I'd be upset if you took the Spinnerproof name and did something else with it, though.
I couldn't. I do wonder what we do with the Spinnerproof name. Obviously, the podcast will end eventually. But I don't think our involvement in robot stuff, certainly not both of our involvement in robot stuff, would. So what do you reckon we'd do in terms of a team name? Would we like keep it alive or just like kill it with the podcast and move on to something different?
I think we'd stay as Team Spinnerproof. I think that the podcast will exist in one form or another for as long as we are both into robot combat. Well, it will exist online for as long as I keep paying for the domain and the hosting, and it will exist.
And YouTube.
YouTube doesn't count. It's not the canonical source of Spinnerproof. But
it's the bootleg.
But like I think we'll probably make infrequent episodes for as long as we're both making robots and stuff. Like we'd probably every now and then be like, let's make an episode. I think that if this podcast like properly stops, I think that'll be when the team stops as well. I would have thought.
Actually, I guess the only way the podcast would die permanently is if we just weren't doing anything together anymore.
Yeah.
So you're stuck with us. All of you out there, there's no escape. You can't just not listen and not download things and not go on the YouTube channel. That's not how this works. We're here to stay. And I'm going to stop talking directly to the audience now because it feels really weird. I feel like we've gone off topic very quickly. I
think this does not bode well. Look, we need another focused on topic episode. And so I think you should explain the mistakes that you made last week.
Yeah, so as a direct consequence of all of my focus last episode, I made a bit of a mistake. And it was the result of the mistake in the episode before that. So we had to do a bit of a do-over for Minotaur Hypothermia.
No. We had a do-over last time for Magnetar and Hypothermia.
Sorry, yeah, I was just thinking. I was literally just panicking that I'd made another mistake, but it turned out it's complicated. It shouldn't be complicated, but it is. So we had to do that fight again, which meant that in the format we have for notes, which is basically a slideshow with a notes page for each robot, where I kind of pair them up into the fixtures for that episode, it meant I had to leave a gap in that because I didn't know which robot was going to be fitting in there. I then went through and just kind of paired them up as they were, forgetting that there was meant to be a gap there, which meant that I ended up with the wrong robots fighting each other. I think I had Beta versus Duck, and then I forgot Son of Waiachi completely. So where we should have had Hypothermia versus Beta and Duck versus Son of Waiachi, we ended up with just the one wrong fight, Beta versus Duck. So we've got 2 fights from that round that we now need to redo. The winners face each other in the next round. I'm not sure any of this explanation has helped.
Lest the audience question the integrity of this tournament, the simple thing to do would have been to just do Hypothermia versus Son of Waiachi and then not mention the fact that we got it wrong last time. But Ryan is determined to do this properly, and so we've got to redo fights.
Yeah, I genuinely couldn't let myself do that. That felt like kind of revising future history, if that makes sense. Which I guess is like every action we ever make, but yeah, because it was set up as a bracket, I feel like the bracket needs to be followed. And no one else will know, but I will know.
Well, now everyone will know.
So we start with 2 fights from the previous round. The first being Hypothermia versus Beta.
Now, you'd better be right about having to do this fight because you've just introduced this in a way that makes it really hard for me to cut. So if this is wrong, I'm going to be upset with you.
Next up, we have Hypothermia versus Beta. Hypothermia versus Beta.
Oh dear.
How many takes do you need, Sam?
I think we're covered. We've got it.
This is a much harder decision than last time.
This is it's still a boring fight. I think I don't see this being particularly exciting.
I would have said that going into Beta versus Lucky though, and that was a really good fight because what you've basically got is a thing that Beta can hit, and I think that's all you need for entertainment in any fight involving a powerful hammer.
So I don't think that this is going to be significantly different to Beta versus Duck, to be honest. I think that you've got the similar thing where I think this will inevitably go to a judge's decision. And I think there's probably a little bit more nuance there because Hypothermia's maybe got a bit more of an obvious weapon, but I don't think it's any more effective than Duck's lifter. And so I feel like it's going to be whatever we did last time, which was like big odds for Beta.
Yeah, last time we did 1 and 6 in Beta's favour. That was based on the size and uniformity of target that Duck would offer, and our assumption that the top armour isn't particularly chunky, because there's so much redundancy underneath it and such a thick frame underneath it. We kind of went by the logic that the top armour probably isn't that beefy, so visible damage will be quite easy to do, or there would be visible damage, basically, for the judges to go on. I think in this case, damage would be less clear-cut, because while you look at a hammer like Beta coming down on something and know that it's probably damaged something in some way, that's not really how the judges work. They need evidence that damage has been done, and I'm not sure that would be as easy to come by here. It would be easier for Hypothermia to sway this through, realistically, probably control rather than aggression.
I don't know. I think there'd be some dents on Hypothermia at the end of this. I think there are some... I don't know. I don't know enough about the materials this is made out of. I would guess that those arms on top are made out of aluminium, but I have no idea why I think that.
I guess the weapon mechanism could be vulnerable to damage, couldn't it?
Yeah, if you get like a hit in the chain, maybe you can imagine sort of whacking that chain and snapping it.
Maybe just backdriving the weapon would be enough as well. The kind of impact it's going to take from a hammer, that really short, sharp impact. Even if there's some kind of clutch setup in there, that might not be sufficient. It's going to be sort of designed for high torque, low speed loads.
The thing is, if you're thinking about visible damage, I think that Beta stands a chance of doing visible damage to Hypothermia, but Hypothermia, I don't know, like it can probably scratch the metal on Beta a little bit, but like, does that count as damage? I hope not. I wouldn't have thought
my
so.
concern, it would be that we end up in a no visible damage to either robot kind of situation, which puts Hypothermia in range for control or aggression to sway it.
I don't know. I don't see it. I still think this is pretty favourable to Beta still, to be honest.
What numbers are you thinking?
I would do 6-1 or 1 and 6 again. If you feel strongly that Hypothermia stands more of a chance than that and determined that it's 2 and 5, then I'll go with that as well.
I think I could make an argument for 2 and 5, but I'm not against 1 and 6. I'm happy with 1 and 6, having had the discussion about it, so that people won't be angry at me and they'll be angry at you instead.
That's fine. I can cope with that. I'm very happy to block everyone that's angry with me. Tweet me if you dare.
Block early, block often. So yeah, go for it. 1 for hypothermia, the rest for beta.
God damn it, it's a 1.
Oh, piss off. I mean, this isn't the result I wanted.
Ugh.
At least it's not expulsion. That is the second time that hypothermia has defied odds. It took Hypershock out early on, only 3 and 4 that time. Nothing as severe. I mean, admittedly, again, that feels generous to hypothermia looking back on it, but to be fair, we are talking the older versions of Hypershock. I think 2019 has changed our judgment on that quite severely. But based on the sort of 2018 and before, maybe it's a little more reasonable. Well, that happened.
That happened. I hope you're happy that we've redone that fight. I hope you're pleased with yourself.
Happy is a relative term. Would you like to introduce the next one?
We have Duck versus Son of Waiachi.
I'm especially glad actually now we're doing this, because at least now Duck has a chance of going through where it didn't originally. Especially on the basis that hypothermia has now gone through. I need a lift. Was that a of my bias? Or a of, oh no, I've got to tell him he's wrong anyway?
I feel like you're gonna favour Duck, and I just don't understand why. Like, I appreciate that Duck will survive this fight, but I don't think Son of Waiachi is going to break during it.
So for me, this is all about the potential for Son of Waiachi to flip itself. I do not think it's in Duck's favour. I think the Gigabyte fight shows that while it can take hits, it is still obviously vulnerable to damage. And damage, as we know, pretty much kills your chances of any judge's decision.
Yeah.
Flipping Son of Waiachi is going to be difficult because you've got to make it flip itself, and that means that it's got to flip itself from an impact but not be spinning so much that it prevents itself from flipping. It's a pretty fringy case, but it is there, you know?
Yeah, it is there. You're right. But like you're saying, like, Son of Waiachi I think is a hard robot to flip, because assuming it's spinning, it's going to be stable in whatever orientation it's in. And so while I agree Duck will probably survive the fight, and I agree that there is a potential here for Duck to win the fight, but I don't think it changes the fact that this is a 1 and 6.
I find it hard to make this 1 and 6 if only based on the knowledge that this is the kind of fight Duck has been designed for. It's the kind of fight it should thrive in. And I realise that doesn't mean it's the kind of fight it will thrive in. Especially this iteration of it, which, even if it does get Son of Waiachi stopped, doesn't really have the potential to flip it itself. I just don't want it to be 1 and 6. That's what's happening here. I just don't like it. I agree it's probably right, but I dislike it greatly.
Yeah, like, we all want Duck to do well. It would be nice, but I don't see it happening. I think that the probability of Son of Waiachi being flipped, I think, is low. And is covered by the 1 of Duck. And I think if it goes to the judges, like you sort of say, they're like, Son of Waiachi will deliver so much damage to Duck that nothing else matters.
I'm trying to think of like a single time that Son of Waiachi's weapon has broken down, and I can't bring one to mind, especially not against a robot that doesn't have a damaging weapon. Obviously, the weapon has taken damage. The robot overall has been knocked out by damage, but that's been from robots actively doing that to it. And one of them is in 2019 anyway, so it doesn't count. Unfortunately, because of the way probability works, Duck is now even less likely to win this fight than it normally would be, because we got a 1 last time.
I know you're being facetious, but I want to clarify for the audience, that's not how probability works. The
die will remember.
Of course.
Go on then, 1 for Duck, everything else is Son of Waiachi. Cross your fingers.
I'm afraid to say that it's a 6.
Oh, if only we'd done 2 and 5 instead. Son of Waiachi could have still won. I feel like people are going to get the impression that I don't like Son of Waiachi, when the truth is, I just kind of nothing it. It's fine. But in terms of the meta of what we're doing here, Duck would have been so much more interesting to carry forward and have so much more potential to take out big names.
Indeed. Alas, this is a pure bracket, and we can't tamper with it in any way, even inadvertently.
Boy, have we tried. Right, I'm going to take a pause here to go through and make sure that I edit the spreadsheet to reflect what has just happened.
Okay.
So we now move on to the round of 16 proper.
Finally.
We never thought we'd get this far. It's only taken over a year.
It's disgusting how long this has taken us.
Apathy is a powerful thing. Actually, it's not apathy, it's procrastination. That's the one.
Procrastination. The knowledge that the task that we've undertaken is huge. If only Huge were in this next fight.
I know, Huge went out so early, and it really, really hurt me. Anyway, we'll start the round of 16 with Valkyrie versus Lockjaw.
I feel like we were accused of like overrating Valkyrie last time.
Well, there's no danger of that this time. Actually, maybe there is a danger of that this time, because this is one of the smoky Lockjaws. Actually, you know what? This is one of the more vulnerable designs to an undercutter. Bugger. By the way, I stand by the Cobalt odds. Yes, Valkyrie was a bit flaky, shall we say, but I really don't think it needed to do that much in that fight. It had the reach advantage, and that's something that would be very difficult for Cobalt to overcome. Although it is interesting that we've seen in the trailer for the new season Valkyrie versus Rotator, which is kind of a similar setup in terms of the way the two weapons interact. And that's kind of irrelevant, but it looks like a fun fight. So, yeah.
Would be amazing if like some of these fights that we've done on Return actually happen and then go the way that we thought they would.
Yeah, when Robot Wars comes back for Series 11, which is definitely happening, guys. Keep making petitions and Facebook groups. So Expulsion takes out Eruption in the first fight.
It could happen. You know, infinite timescale.
I mean, in a parallel universe, it almost certainly has happened.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, I think the concept is that it definitely has happened, but it seems so unlikely I'm going to give it an almost.
Even in the face of infinite parallel universes, it's almost certainly happened.
This is a tricky one. I don't like this. I came in thinking this was clear cut.
Yeah. I don't know.
Ooh. Lockjaw has the funky rear wedge, I've just remembered, as a configuration option.
Oh. That changes things.
The funky rear wedge that stood up to Son of Waiachi.
That does change things.
That is in our timeline good.
I was about to say that I still would give this in favour of Valkyrie, just for all the same reasons, in that I think it's got the reach advantage and I think it can do a number on the tyres. But yeah, maybe with the wedge, maybe that changes things. Maybe as long as that wedge is low enough.
I imagine it can be set up to be. See, my worry initially was that Lockjaw wouldn't be able to use the forks because they're not going to work very well in that situation. And without a front wedge option, it can't really get the weapon in underneath. It's going to get the weapon sort of hitting on the top of their weapon, which is not a nice situation for him. The rear wedge, I think, does change quite a lot. Valkyrie's got a very slow spin up. Lockjaw is fast and well driven. So it can pretty much dictate how it takes that first hit with the wedge. And I think there would be ample opportunity from there to get its own weapon in.
Yeah, I think the speed and the driving of Lockjaw combined with the wedge, I think definitely tip this in their favour. I don't think it's a landslide one way or the other, but I'm feeling maybe a 5 for Lockjaw, maybe. Don't know.
Yeah, I feel like we can't give Lockjaw less than we gave Valkyrie against Cobalt. I think 2-5 is fair. I nearly fell into the 5-2 trap there, and I can't allow that to happen.
Well.
So 1-2 for Valkyrie, 4-5-6-7 for Lockjaw.
What about 3? What happens if it lands on a 3 now?
Oh, 3 is a number that exists, yeah. Wow, give that to Lockjaw as well, I suppose. Yeah, throw him a bone.
You're doing well on the counting front at the moment. It is a 6. Lockjaw hath won.
Good.
Up next, we have Apollo versus Red Devil, brackets 2018.
Apollo's had an interesting run. It got 4-2 odds over Cobra, which, again, with hindsight, feel generous to Cobra. And then it's had a 6-1 and a 6-1. And I feel like it's getting another one again. Which is funny because it's the weakest champion in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree on the odds. It hurts me. It hurts me to be giving Red Devil a 1 again. I don't know about Apollo being the weakest champion, but then I'm not. I guess I don't have like the recall and all the knowledge around all the champions that have ever been that you do. So,
I mean, well, of the ones that we're dealing with, which are, there's only 5 of them: Apollo, Carbide, Eruption, Tombstone, Bite Force. You could argue there's 2 Bite Forces, but we only chose one of them. So,
yeah,
Eruption has been far more dominant in most of its wins than Apollo ever was. Apollo's better against horizontals than Eruption, but other than that, of the lot, it's the one I would back in the fewest situations. In Retuncti terms, it's the one I expected to go least far, all things being equal. And here it is, as the only remaining Robot Wars champion, thanks to Expulsion.
We should do an Apollo versus Expulsion.
I mean, it could still come up. Let's not rule it out. It would take a lot, but it could happen.
Yeah, it could happen. I was about to just do a silly roll just for sort of my own amusement to see what it would be, but yeah, it could come up, so I won't. I'll save it. I don't know what more is to say, really. I agree.
It's obviously a 6-1, isn't it? It's a very difficult style of robot for Red Devil to go out and control bot against. The only places it could potentially grab hold are either the flipper itself, where it's getting thrown, or the back where it can't really do anything. It's just up against it. It's also in the Robot Wars arena, which just makes it worse for it.
Yeah, I agree. On all counts.
So 1 and 6.
Yeah, no, 6 and 1.
So, yeah, 6 and 1.
1 through 6 for Apollo, 7 for Red Devil. And it is a 4 Apollo win. Unsurprisingly.
Not a shock at all. We march on then with Warhawk versus Tombstone. I think most Tombstone fights we have are basically a question of, is this 6 and 1, or is this like a 4 and 3 to one or the other of them?
I would expect Tombstone to win this, but I don't think it's a 1 and 6. I shall now hand over to Ryan to explain why I'm wrong about that.
So, in a previous episode, I described Warhawk's wins as largely quite soft. Axe Backwards is a robot that has rarely managed to really work as intended, and boy do I hope it does this season. Overhaul took it to a judge's decision. Overhaul, again, not a particularly competitive machine, a beautiful machine that I love, but not all that competitive. Free shipping, exactly the same situation. And then it had the play-in against Endgame and Brutus. I don't quite remember how that went down, but I feel like there was a lot of, 2 robots hurt each other and the third kind of gets through. Not in like a J Catalyst wee-woo sense of ran away and did nothing for it. They were definitely involved, but I'm not sure it was the cleanest win it could have been. If I've misremembered that, I apologise. But it does have a nice wedge.
Yeah.
And that, I guess, does at least give it another point of possibility.
I'm just having visions that we're going to be yelled at for giving Warhawk anything other than a 1 now. Get everything you've just said.
But I also said it has a wedge.
Yeah.
And thinking of robots that have beaten Tombstone, Bite Force in Series 1, Rotator, Bombshell, Bite Force again, that's the one. Wow, that shouldn't have taken me so long. All of those had a good wedge on them. 2 of them combined it with a vert. It's like, there is a sort of blueprint for beating Tombstone, and Warhawk isn't a million miles from matching it.
Yeah.
Of course, there are also plenty of robots like that they've happily beaten. Witch Doctor springs to mind. Brutus springs to mind as well. Others probably should spring to mind. I literally have them written down. Why is this such a challenge for me? Okay, to be fair, those are pretty much all of them. Maybe you'd include Whiplash on that list as well.
So you're saying the Tombstone has beaten Brutus and Warhawk has lost to Brutus. So is there like a transitive property of equality here?
Yeah, playground rules. I'm happy to not make it 1 and 6. I think 2 and 5 is reasonable enough. It should be like 1.5, 6.5. No, that's not how those numbers work. 1.5 and 5.5, but that's not a possibility. So what we need to do, because obviously if it's 0.5 you round up, is we'll round both of those numbers up.
God.
Which makes it 2 and 6.
No, unacceptable.
Can't you just add another side quickly? So that was a bit of hot glue or something.
If only it worked that way. Well, I mean, yeah. So my original thought was like, 2 and 5, but now I'm questioning myself and envisioning the comments. And is that the wrong call?
Have I lost all my persuasive ability? I seem to agree with you, and by going into detail on why I agree, you change your mind. I'm starting to get a little offended.
Maybe I'm just looking for an argument. Right, okay. 2 and 5 then. Fine.
Yeah, so 1 and 2 for Warhawk, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for Tombstone.
It is a 7.
And none of it mattered.
Following that thrilling fight, we have Whiplash versus Expulsion.
Don't say anything. You know what to do.
God.
Your silence hurts, Sam. No, you're faking this now.
Can I just confirm that if it's a 7, that Expulsion has won, right?
Yes, but it's not a 7.
Okay. I'm genuine again. I don't know what to say. I'm looking at a 7. I don't know what to do with this now, because
it's kind of getting silly. It's just again, I don't know if this might be a repeat of what I said last time, but I was really hoping this kind of thing would happen. It's like part of the fun. But at this point, for the record, I'm not doubting you. I'm not doubting you at all.
This is the thing that hurts me at the moment, is that I know that I haven't made anything up, and I trust that you trust me that I've not made anything up. But this especially has crossed the threshold where I think people don't believe us anymore, and that's annoying. I don't know what to do about that.
It was a lot easier when we were doing this face to face. I think next time, we're currently recording on Skype. Next time we should record on Zoom, and you could just have your camera facing where you're rolling this thing.
What I was thinking is so for the next fight, I wonder if we should just like live stream this, like that fight.
Well, as in next time we do an expulsion fight.
Yeah, next time there's an expulsion fight, just live stream just that fight so that we have witnesses.
Genuinely, yes. Although we know what's going to happen when we do that. It's just going to go the way it should.
And that would be fine. That would be fine. But like in the event that it's another ridiculous win for this robot, then there would be witnesses and evidence.
Oh, I'm so annoyed.
I just don't know what to...
So annoyed. It's like, it's funny. It's absolutely funny, but it's less funny every time.
It just like hurts me writing these words. Beat Whiplash.
I mean, we're not done here. We've still got work to do on this one. We've got to justify this. Because we're not in the Robot Wars arena. We can't just throw a pitting at this.
I'm just looking over the win record here. It's beat Pulsar with odds of 1 to 5. It beat Carbide with odds of 1 to 6. It beat Eruption with odds of 1 to 6. And now it's beat Whiplash 1 to 6. It's ridiculous.
It's never had anything but the worst odds. Or the worst odds, should I say in English. Just going to quickly do the maths on the likelihood of this. We're now at worse than 1 in 1,000. 1 in 1,080.
I can't believe I can't believe it.
So how does it happen?
I don't know. I don't know.
I feel like Retukti is kind of ruined now. It's like you can't trust this now. This is how
like all I've got is what I said last time, which is an act of God. Like I just like what, like short of some catastrophic failure in Whiplash. What was Whiplash's last fight? Broncos. I can't even like claim damage from previous fights because Whiplash has walked everything so far.
Oh yeah, and Bronco wouldn't get a flip in anyway. So
yeah, so it's points.
Right,
I can't even play that card. This would be like a Whiplash that has gone through this tournament with basically no damage. It's in like peak condition.
So if Expulsion goes... Because obviously Expulsion's also in peak condition. It's walked all of its fights. If they go in with the really sort of heavily toothy spinner that It's probably hideously ineffective, but oh well, as opposed to the kind of flaily version that they have. I don't know if there's potential for some really funky interaction with Whiplash's disc, because Whiplash's disc has got the kind of holes in the side.
Yeah.
The Whiplash disc is kind of that framework almost, isn't it? I don't know if there's a way for Expulsion to get in there and really tweak that in a way that just messes up that whole weapon system. Although even then, Whiplash driving into it would be enough. You know, Whiplash is a stiff breeze. Maybe the lack of weapon power in Expulsion can work in their favour, where a hit to a Whiplash wheel, rather than removing it, just jams it. You know, kind of starting to limit the mobility, and they can grind it down that way. But even that's a stretch.
Right, here's my theory. This is the best I can do, right? Expulsion is by an arena wall, right? Whiplash drives at it full force. Now, Expulsion, because it's a pile of rubbish, doesn't do much to slow Whiplash down. And so Whiplash effectively goes through Expulsion and then gets the bottom of its sort of like lifter thing stuck between the floor and the bottom of the wall. And is
the Bourbon Kylo Ren situation. A fine choice, may I say.
And consequently, gets counted out.
I mean, that's a genuinely good shout.
That's the best I can do.
I will take it.
This tournament has broken me. I wish I was streaming the one that wish I was streaming that role, because I want people to believe that happened.
I'm just quitting the sport. I think it's the only thing I can reasonably do. Yeah, the build I was going to work on this weekend, just no. I'll sell off the materials and the components. I'm done.
Yeah, this is it. You can find the show notes for this episode at spinnerproof.com.
I love the idea that we would stop the recording but still do the edit and release. I suppose we'd better try and move on.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be able to give you a clean edit, because the exasperation is still going to be in my voice when I do this.
Oh, I can't remove that fight. It's got to stay in there.
So next up we have the 4 or so Horsemen versus Minotaur. Another sudden and unexpected Irish entry there.
That took me a little moment to sort of process what you meant by that. Yeah. This feels like this should be Minotaur's fight.
You see, part of me wanted to do the same gag as I wanted to do with Whiplash of let's not say anything and just roll, but that's cursed now. Not doing that again.
Well, is the 1 and 6 cursed? Is that the problem?
What, are you thinking we should make this 2 and 5 just so that Minotaur is more likely to win?
Yeah, because superstition is a good fit for this podcast.
Last time was no, it wasn't 1, it was a 7, bugger. So even if we give a 6, 1 and 6 here, it's effectively a 2 and 5 because of the curse.
Is that how that works, is it?
I don't know anymore. I've aged about 3 years in the last 10 minutes.
Right, let's get as far away from that expulsion fight as possible then. This is a 1 and 6, I think. There's no discussion to be had here. Minotaur's going to win this fight.
Yeah. If it doesn't, we have ways of justifying it, but it's a 1 and 6.
It's a 1 and 6.
And I've also just realised that I still have a picture of 2019 Minotaur on this slide. And I really should fix that.
I will forgive you. It is a 4.
Good enough.
The universe is not entirely cruel and unjust. A Minotaur has won.
I mean, really, that's the cruelest possible thing it could have done, because it means that you have to keep hearing me mispronounce Minotaur in your eyes, and I have to keep hearing you mispronounce Minotaur in the eyes of reality.
Is it the eyes of reality? I mean, if you watch the show, you'll hear them say Minotaur. You won't hear them say Minotaur.
Yeah, but they're Americans. Of course they're saying things wrong. It's like central to their language and culture.
How does the team say it?
Probably in Brazilian.
Yes, but when they're speaking English on the show, how does the team say it?
Look, it only counts if an English person says it.
No, that is not how this works.
That Greek word... Only a native English speaker is the only person that is allowed to define how it's pronounced. Of course, that rule doesn't apply to Behemoth, which is always Behemoth, despite what the native English-speaking team say.
Well, this is the thing. I wanted you to say that the team said Minotaur so I could play the Behemoth card and ignore them.
Well, keep that in your back pocket for when it comes in useful. I don't actually know what the team say. I should check that. It won't change my mind, but I should check that.
It's not going to change my mind either. Right. Are you ready to move on?
Yep. And I've just looked ahead at the upcoming fights, and I think they're all pretty much the same story.
This is going to be a weirdly short episode. Up next, we have Rapid versus Complete Control.
First thing of note, Robot Wars Arena. Second thing of note, Rapid is very low. And that's kind of the deciding factor here, I think. Oh, and the fact that Complete Control, as far as we're aware, can't self-right effectively.
It's a 5.
Rapid goes through. I did realise, by the way, after saying about how low Rapid was, the Complete Control's lifter may have the hinged wedgelets on the end, which would maybe give it a better chance of getting under. But even with that, it's not going to be able to grab a flipper reliably.
No, that's the thing. Short of it getting around the back, depending on where that flipper hinges, I can't remember, then maybe they could get a good hold on the back. But yeah, I just don't think there's much chance for getting the flamethrower in even. So yeah. I mean, for the clarity, the odds would have been, 6 and 1, and it's a 5, so rapid of 1.
It's worth mentioning, by the way, that I now completely understand the shape of Rapid. Having recently tried to do an amp weight flipper mechanism, the thing that screwed it up was the whole flipper panel being angled and messing up the geometry of what I wanted to do with the servo. And a flat top would have been just the perfect solution and made everything fine. So I now finally understand why they do that. I always thought it looks a bit crap, but now it's pure pragmatism and I appreciate it.
You're a changed man.
Just simplifies that interaction between whatever your power source is and the flipper. It's great.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Hypothermia versus Son of Waiachi.
Yeah.
And I've already forgotten what happened in both of their fights earlier, so I need to take a look. Son of Waiachi duck 6 and 1. Oh. Hypothermia's bullshit. It seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? Suddenly it doesn't seem so bad.
No, that's entirely fair and justified. I've got no problem with that one now. I mean, I'm gonna say it. This is a 1 and 6, isn't it?
I think it just might be. Can I just point out, though, Hypothermia had a really tough set of fights. Yeah, getting Minotaur and Whiplash as a new robot, okay, not a new team. That's really harsh. Granted, I guess Valkyrie was a softer fight at the time. The Four Horsemen is usually a pretty good bet. So I guess it came back to them in that way, but yeah, they had it rough. So maybe this was all just karma. And this really is the prize that they all want.
To go further than expected in a fantasy tournament.
I know we never had a prize for this. I have a bag of ordinary sized nuts in front of me. I can just send whoever wins one of them. It's like, here's a shit trophy for a thing you didn't know you were entered into.
Yes.
Send them a sticker as well. I'm sure they'll prize it.
Oh dear. Gotta get the smallest nut we can find, like an M0 nut.
A non-existent nut.
Right.
1 and 6.
1 and
1
6.
for Hypothermia, the rest for Son of Waiachi.
It is a 7.
So that's Son of Waiachi.
Indeed, it is. Beat Hypothermia.
Now, I'm very grateful at this point that Apollo got through its fight. Because if not, the next fight would be to decide whether Expulsion was the only Robot Wars representative going through.
Oh, no.
It's bad enough that it's there at all, but at least it's in some company.
Look, stop mentioning Expulsion, okay? We don't talk about that robot.
Yeah, we tried not to, and look how that ended.
From now on, we will silently roll, and then that's it.
But live, obviously.
But live.
We'll have to give context for the live stream, though.
No, I mean, so this episode is the context, right? So, if keep an eye, subscribe, on YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell, get notified of when we go live, and then at some point in the next week or so, we will go live, roll a die, and then stop being live.
Can we start a mailing list just for this?
No.
You know what we should do for next episode? Is start up a live stream that's just the table with no audio and have it on for the whole thing. So people can watch the rolls happen with no context whatsoever.
Not know the discussion. People, I guess, would be able to derive the, if they cared enough, would be able to derive the fights, though.
No, we do them in a different order to that, which will be in the episode, then you'll fix it in the edit.
Oh, will I now?
Yeah. Anyway, should we do this last one, because we've got after showage.
Indeed. We have Bite Force versus Storm 2.
Now, I would love to say this is anything other than a 1 and 6, and if it were in the Robot Wars arena, I would try and justify that. I really would. Because pit, and durability, and house robots, and so on. In this case, can you offer anything to say that it's not?
I mean, well, it is Bite Force, so I think giving them only a 1 is a bit unfair.
I can only respect that nitpick.
Yeah, this is Bite Force's fight. It's going to be a 6 and 1. I don't know.
I mean, Robot Wars machines have a knack for this.
I'd like to think that Storm 2 could hold up quite well. I think it would be a good fight.
That's very generous of you.
Okay.
I think it would be a match.
It would be a fight that happened, would it?
It would be a fixture. I'll give it that.
Okay.
As anticlimactic as this is, it's a 6 and 1. It's a shame that the last few have come down to that. Maybe there's another sting in the tail. Let's roll it and find out.
No, it's a 4.
That's fine.
That is fine. You know what? I want Expulsion to beat Bite Force now. That's what I want to happen.
I think that can only happen in the final. I'll quickly go through. I haven't got the spreadsheet open, but let's quickly work out what the top 8 looks like. So we start off with Lockjaw versus Apollo. Already interesting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Tombstone versus Expulsion. I mean, there's no more guarantees there than there have been already.
No, it's another horizontal spin. It's going to fall to the might of Expulsion.
Then have Minotaur versus Rapid.
Ooh.
And then Son of Waiachi versus Bite Force. I don't think we're having such an easy ride next time.
No. I think there might be more to discuss there.
There is a 6 and 1 in there, but we might have to make that 5 and 2 just to appease the gods of probability.
No, that's not how it works. No superstition on this show.
And of course, next episode, we will go through right to the end.
Yeah. God, the next episode will be the last episode of Retukti.
Yeah, I know.
Woo!
Any prediction out of those 8?
Expulsion. I genuinely am like, I've reached that point now where I think that might genuinely win.
I'll calculate the odds.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably going to be Bite Force because I can't think that we're going to give it anything less than the best odds at any given point. So I think it's quite unlikely for it to lose everything. But
an Expulsion win at nothing but the worst odds would be approximately 1 in 40,000. You see, when I've run through this in my head, just going, who do I think should win this? Although I don't see how this happened. I think I ended up with Storm 2, which means I must have had Storm 2 to beat Bite Force, because the bracket has always been the same as it currently is. So maybe I'm just an idiot. But basically, my way of thinking when I've run through this before has usually led to a non-spinner winning, and I'm fairly sure that's just my bias working there.
Mm.
I think you're right that if we kept a robot like Whiplash in,
if only.
I think that would have been quite wild-cardy for me. I think having a robot like Beta in there is the kind of thing where I think we would potentially not quite give a 1 and 6 for a robot like Bite Force because of the overhead weapon.
Yeah.
With what we have left, I think it is largely Bite Forces. I'm not sure that's a 6 and 1 with Sal, though. I don't know. I'll have to think about that one as we go. But we'll save that for then. I don't want to get into those weeds now.
Yeah, that's the one that I think there might be a discussion to be had. But yeah, we'll get there next time.
Right, do you want to outro now and then after show? I can't remember how the structure works.
We do an outro and then there's an after show. That's the point of the after show.
That does seem like how after show should work. It's like implied by the name, isn't it? It's after the show.
As ever, I'm not sure if people know that we sometimes have an after show. I don't know how many people stop listening when I say you can find the show notes for this episode, but I might leave this bit in. There will be an after show. We'll discuss BattleBots some more. We signposted it earlier as well. We've done a very good job of laying out what was happening today. You can find the show notes for this episode at spinnerproof.com/episodes/82. And there you can find links to all the stuff we've been talking about today. Damn it.
Keep it all in.
And there you can find links to all the stuff we've been talking about today, including a link to our YouTube where you can subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of when we go live next time. You can also find a link to our Twitter at Spinnerproof where you can tweet to us your favourite tool that you don't own.
Oh goody, the fireworks have started outside. That's probably going to get on the audio.
Huzzah!
Right, I'm going to kick off the after show by doing something that you will hate me for now, but thank me for later. And I'm just going to point out that half of this after show is pre-recorded, half of it is being recorded now. The stuff we did before will not edit together cleanly. It will be very obvious that it is from before. And I apologise for that, but there's no way in hell it's coming together nicely, and we're just going to have to go with it.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to call OCD, even though people doing that annoys me, would not allow for us not to leave these robots in alphabetical order. So like B through to G we did before, and I want those to come in now before we do the live stuff.
Okay.
So mixed feelings are next.
Oh dear. Okay. That hammer looks tiny.
I think the hammer is the same size, it's just the rest of the robot has got bigger. Well, bigger from the front.
Okay.
So we're talking beta here. Oh, I don't know what to think.
I wish I could see it from the back, just to see how horrific that little...
You don't wish you could see it from the back. I could find you a picture of it from the back, but I wouldn't be a good friend if I did that.
Friends don't let friends see the back of beta. Oh dear.
I'm pleased to have beta back. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
I think it is potentially a very competitive hammer, and competitive hammers are always a good thing. The front wedge is its biggest strength, although again, only really against horizontals, I always forget that. It is apparently quite heavily magneted,
Yep.
which is going to be advantageous in terms of maximising the power of the hammer, and also potentially helpful for sort of preventing verts getting underneath. But I can't look past the fact that it's gone pneumatic rather than electric for the weapon.
Yeah, that is a shame, and it's sort of funny because you sort of think, what does it matter? But because it was like it wasn't the only electric hammer, I assume, but it was a very iconic electric hammer.
Yeah, and we still have Shatter as the sort of electric hammer of dreams.
Yeah,
I think the difference it makes for me is that when someone goes in with a pneumatic hammer, my first thought is, how many shots have they really got? How many good shots? How much are they going to deteriorate through the fight? Is that first one going to be the one and then it's going to be weaker from there?
Well, I mean, these guys have designed many pneumatic hammers, I feel, over the years. So I think they probably know what they're doing. I trust that it will still be good.
It will still be good. I just won't love it quite as much. I like the idea of a hammer going in with the strategy of I'm just going to keep swinging. That was very much our approach, and it worked super well for us. So I'm sure it would work well for them as well.
I mean, the thing is, with an electric hammer that has the power of beta, they've still got a limited number of shots.
No. Power is infinite.
One day, maybe, but for now, we're limited by the battery capacity, so...
I've just had a little scroll down to the interesting fact. Now, I said that the interestingness of these might vary. This just makes me a little bit itchy and weird. We are all celebrities in another part of the world.
Well, there we go.
I always think it's interesting when you declare yourself a celebrity. I think that's how that's meant to work, right? It isn't other people that decide that. You just go, yeah, I'm a celebrity now.
Well, we are. If you look in the right places on the internet, then we're pretty well known.
I'd say we're known across a large part of the world. We know that we've had downloads from all kinds of places. BoggleBots as well has a surprisingly large geographical reach. There's definitely someone in Cambodia who would, be able to recognise our voices. We're worldwide. We made it.
A worldwide phenomenon.
If anything, it's easier to find us and listen to us worldwide than it is to watch BattleBots or King of Bots or even Robot Wars. Yeah, there are no geo restrictions on Spinnerproof.
No, I mean, unless
I'm aware of.
Unless a country has specifically blocked our website, you could just download it. I do wonder if we're blocked in China.
It's only one way to find out. Go to China.
So it could go either way. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we were, but I wouldn't be surprised if we weren't either, because we're so small. Anyway.
If anyone's listening to this from China, let us know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Yeah, mixed feelings about beta. I'm glad to see it back. I'm sad about the ugly featherweight that's been put up its rear end, and I'm sad that it's pneumatic rather than electric, but we'll see. I hope it does well.
I think it will do well. And also, oh no, what I was about to say was factually inaccurate, so I won't say it.
Perfect.
Excellent. Let's go to the other end of the scale, although with the same colour scheme, and move on to Black Widow.
Oh boy.
Now, I assume that being a walker, a proper-looking walker, this has the full £500?
Oh, crikey, that thing walks, does it?
Well, I assume so, judging by all the legs.
I assumed that they were just there for the aesthetic and then would get ripped off in the first seconds of a fight.
It seems like they're there for function, and will probably get ripped off quite early in a fight.
Yeah, this is always the thing. Whenever I've thought about what it would take to build a walker robot, it's like, what I'd want is for the legs to be on display so you can see them and see the glory of them working. But then if you did that, it would immediately just lose most fights because it would lose the legs. And then you've got to like armour them up so much that like you can't see them. And then what's the point? But
it is possible that this is actually a roller. I'm kind of, as I recall, when it was originally entered, it was entered as a walker. Or maybe that's just a conclusion we all jumped on because we saw a spider thing.
I really don't think that's a walker. I don't think there's enough in those legs to do it.
I'm trying to get a good close look and see if it looks like there's any articulation on them.
There might be. They might be waggle sticks or something, but I really don't think that they're load bearing. I mean, in the first picture, there's like a gap on the right hand side, the second leg back, and it looks like there's a gap in it.
Yeah, maybe not a walker then. Maybe a roller that's lying to us.
And like, it doesn't look like the welds for those joints go all the way around. It does look like they're sort of just tack welded on the top and stuff. I don't know. Like, it's hard to judge from just a single photo like this, so I don't know. But
if it is a walker, it's going to struggle to keep that front wedge on the floor.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other thing, I'm looking at the drum, and again, I'm being harsh, and like, they've built the robot, and that in itself is an achievement. But the drum looks quite crude, and that makes me question whether or not they can build an effective set of legs for walking. Because I'm mean and armchair engineering.
I've also just seen that the rear leg doesn't appear to have a foot on it.
Yeah, I really don't think it's a walker. I think that's got wheels and got the legs for aesthetics.
I really want it to be a walker. To be fair, we did have initially a robot called Gloomweaver that we saw a few things from, which was a walker in a similar style. The only way we're going to find out is to see it, and that annoys me. I want information now. I want to know.
I'm sorry.
They do, however, have a fun gimmick of silly string apparently coming out of the back.
Excellent.
I would quite like to see them try and draw an actual web on the floor.
It does look a little bit, like those logo robots that you could use to draw on the floor.
What?
Do you remember? Oh, maybe you didn't. So at school.
Oh yeah, I don't. Yeah. I've literally taught with those. I should have remembered that.
You can stick a pen in the middle of and draw. It looks a bit like one of those.
I mean, it's a fun play on that idea. They were always turtle based. Spider based makes just as much sense. Well, at least we've retained some mystery.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what this robot's going to be like. The exposed wires and stuff. This is an interesting robot. I look forward to seeing it. I don't expect it to do very well though.
Again, we always talk about robots in terms of, what will happen when this comes up against a spinner? A lot of these robots will not just get fights against spinners. So in that respect, you have to kind of look at it as everyone has a chance of pulling off a win or two with the right draws.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't assume they're going to lose everything.
Shall we move on? Right, please schedule for the next half hour. We're going to be here a while.
I love that they're all wearing masks.
Yes, this is an interesting thing, actually. Apparently, in production, if you were kind of alone with your own team or on camera, you kind of had a choice about whether to do that or not. And it looks like different teams have kind of made different choices. So this is the first one we've come across. Well, the first one where we've noticed that they've chosen to. Anyway, I wasn't looking that high up. I was looking all down on the floor.
What are we talking about, Ryan? No one knows.
We're talking about the best robot in the competition. We're talking about Chomp.
I think seeing Chomp here with those people confirms for me that Black Widow is not a walker, because if it look at how much bigger Chomp is with all this extra weight. There is no way Black Widow was a walker. And Chomp has done what I said as well, which is if you've got the legs, you've got to put a silly amount of armor on them, and it kind of hides the fact that it's a walker. It's just this huge thing. That looks so different to last Chomp. This is almost a point where, like, should this be a different robot? Like a different name.
If they had renamed, I would be livid. Original Chomp to Hammer Chomp probably should have changed name. In fact, the whole idea of being Chomp the bitey thing has really gone out the window, but I think just because of all the shit they've dealt with about their robot, this absolute Leviathan needed to carry the name. Because I fully believe that this is going to shut a lot of stupid people up. I'm going to try not to soapbox too hard here, but it's going to be difficult.
I see that it's got the flamethrowers again.
Yep. Don't know if it's got the autonomy this time round.
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, they haven't got an opening at the bottom of the skirt for LiDAR stuff this time, by the looks of things. But they might have that. They might have that hidden away somewhere else.
Or it could just be higher up.
I wonder how much more power they've got in that axe or that hammer compared to robots like Beta, for example. Like, with all this extra weight, have they managed to put that into a meaningfully more powerful weapon or not?
According to the team, compared to old Chomp, they've got about 5 times the weapon power. They've also said they're almost certainly not going to use it. Because bear in mind, old Chomp's power was enough to throw a robot half the weight up in the air. So you can only make it twice as powerful without throwing yourself equally as high in the air, because you're only twice as heavy. Going 5 times, just because it's bigger doesn't mean that gravity is now 5 times stronger than it used to be.
I feel like Chomp does have its own gravitational field, though. Yes, I know all things with mass have a gravitational field. Yeah, I know.
Well, actually...
I shouldn't make these jokes with pedantic people like you around.
This is pretty much the ideal implementation of a walker. It's going to be super slow, so you put a weapon on it that you can move and aim quickly. The turret, from what we've sort of seen and heard, moves with a certain
What? That's
quickness.
A turret?
Yeah, did you not realise?
Oh, is that what the arrow means?
Yeah, the top bit rotates, so they can aim wherever.
Oh my
Yeah, the arrow is telling them where forwards is. This is basically a robot on top of a robot.
I am so excited. I had no idea. Oh my goodness me.
So yeah, it moves at roughly walking pace. So it's not like it can turn and face something quickly. So the turret is the moving part. A hammer that I am convinced will be able to one-shot something.
Oh my goodness me. I'm so excited to see this thing in action. That's so cool.
My question to you, and it's really a question to everyone, but you're the person I'm talking to, is what does this need to do to be considered a success? It's like, what is the goal here?
I mean, the fact that it exists. I don't know. What needs to be a success? I think it needs to win a fight, because I think it needs to show that it is possible to use all of that extra weight from walking and to take the compromise that gives you about speed and put that somewhere that lets you win a fight in another way. Like I said, if it can one-shot something because of the extra power in the weapon, that's pretty amazing, I think.
That's the line for me. I think it needs to score a win by KO with the weapon to sort of say that the concept is proven.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think it could do a lot more than that. I think this could be genuinely competitive, although I think a lot will depend on who it's drawn against.
Yeah, I am concerned about what happens if this thing is drawn against a spinner.
I mean, you'd imagine it's fairly well equipped for some kinds of spinner.
Or even a flipper. I know that a flipper is unlikely to be able to throw it anywhere. But like, if you imagine, rather than getting under the robot, but if you sort of got near it and then like whacked the bottom of the turret a bit hard, like I don't know how well, you sort of think how that's a weak point. That connection between the turret and the rest of the robot is a weaker point. Like, what would it take to knock that off or upset that in a way that it doesn't work properly and stuff? I think there are still weak points here. And a vert would do that as well, like a vertical spinner, if it got contact with, like if it fought Monsoon, for example, which could easily get contact with the front of that. I don't know if Monsoon is in this series or not, but
it is not, no.
But something like that. In the grand scheme of things, like, could it, something that's a vertical that's a bit higher up that could hit that? I don't know.
As with any robot, it has flaws. As with most robots, there are certain opponents that you just wouldn't really see it beating, but boy, am I excited to see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. I really want to see it go. I think that'd be really exciting.
This, for me, and I think for a lot of people, is the robot for this season. Like, hands down. I would watch this season if it was just Chomp. That would be enough for me.
They really do push the limits of things, don't they, this team? They really do sort of like, well, we're gonna they like picked a thing and they so we're gonna double down on this thing. Like with all the autonomy stuff, that was sort of quite unique. And then this one is like, well, we've got the option to do a walker now. That's a really hard thing to do, to build a walking robot, I imagine. And it's like, well, we're gonna do it, and they're gonna put a turret on the top of it.
It is funny how lots of people, when the sort of walker rules were announced, just went, yeah, Chomp will do it. It's like any new and interesting thing, there's this kind of assumption of, yeah, they'll work it out for us. We don't need to worry about it. Just let them do it, and then we'll see what works.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be so good. Even if it doesn't work, it will still be great. I'd much rather it did, but just going down to their fact, an actual fact about the robot, which is a rarity. Walker Chomp is made up of about 500 unique parts. That already is enough for me. My
goodness me. Opportunity Rover is a favourite robot as well. That's a good shout. Good choice. I approve.
Calipers is a favourite tool. Yeah. I feel like I need to move on before I just start soapboxing the same all over again.
Yeah. Incredible.
And apologies to the robot that has to follow it. Our next robot is Extinguisher, which I think is our first modular robot so far in terms of completely different weapon setups.
Wow, what else can it do? So hammer/vertical disc.
So vertical disc, yep. That hammer ain't getting used.
Yeah, a fire extinguisher, which will always be a vertical disc as well, I imagine.
The fire extinguisher is cool. Completely useless, but it's a cool, secondary CO2 system they've got in. Well, I say secondary CO2 system, implying they have a primary one. It's a secondary system, CO2-based, that will put out flamethrowers, which means this is getting matched up against something with a big flamethrower.
I would hope so.
It's getting matched up with, a Gruff, or a Black Dragon, or a Kraken, or someone like that. They can't not do it.
I mean, they could not do it. You never know. This reminds me of Witch Doctor, and I think if they put the vertical disc on it, I think it would remind me even more of Witch Doctor.
It is very Witch Doctor with the different wheel sizes, isn't it?
And the general boxiness and the very sort of flat front end and stuff.
When you consider how far they've come from their first heavyweight, this is amazing. Their first heavy competed at Robot Ruckus a couple of years ago, and it was... Do you remember Onslaught from Robot Wars? The one that was at Robo Nerd going against Dave Mould's RC car?
Vaguely, yeah.
Basically a ramp on wheels. Except Onslaught, a robot from the early 2000s, had an active weapon and this didn't. They literally got a drivetrain going, stuck some metal on top of it, and that was their first robot. Which, to be fair, as a way to start, pretty sensible, pretty pragmatic way of going about it. The fact that in a couple of years they've developed into this is just stunning. And now they've got rid of the siren, I want them to do well. When they had the siren, I refused to support them because it made their fights very difficult for me to watch on a sensory level.
Yeah.
Now it's gone, I am all for this robot. Especially if they use the hammer.
Yeah, well.
I'll end on the irony of their favourite tool being a thing that makes things hot.
A welder's a good shout, though. That's a good tool.
Just build everything out of plastic.
You can weld plastic.
So next up, we've got Fusion.
Oh my.
The new Waiachi bot that we've been waiting for. I am so torn between this is going to do brilliantly and this is going to do exactly as well as Falcon did.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm glad that they're experimenting with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued to see what this does gyro-wise. Just like I was with Falcon, actually.
Yeah.
Because obviously, it's not two verts cancelling out. But you have to assume that the big horizontal will kind of attenuate some of the gyro from the vert. The vert is going to try and tip it up, but the horizontal is going to go, no, I'm standing my ground. I refuse to be moved from this plane.
I can almost imagine, I mean, this is not, I think, what would actually happen, but you can almost imagine that if as it turns, rather than it tipping left and right, it ends up tipping forwards and backwards because of the combined gyro effect. But who knows what happens?
I was wondering if that could be a thing.
I expect it will end up being stable in an irritating way.
Are you hoping for the spectacular failure?
Well, no, what I mean by it will be, I think it will end up being gyroscopically stable because of complexities of physics that I don't understand, which is irritating. So
it's not the fact it will be okay that you don't like, it's the fact you won't know why.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm completely with you on that.
I hope it does work. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's such a weird looking robot. I don't know how you'd be interesting to see how you effectively make use of both of those weapons in a fight.
I think the most effective or the biggest impact of the dual weapons comes before the fight when your opponent is deciding what setup to run.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a setup for verts, everyone's got a setup for horizontals, and usually both one is really poorly optimised for the other. So someone goes with their sort of big flat wedge that doesn't have a particularly low ground clearance, you lead with the vert. Someone goes with wedgelets or forks, you lead with the horizontal. I think that's where the real sort of benefit of this idea comes from.
Yeah.
And let's face it, it's going to be well made. It's going to be reliable.
Yeah.
Well, oh, actually, Falcon did exist. It's probably going to be very well made. It's probably going to be very reliable.
I expect that it will be a technically proficient robot, but I could not predict how well it will do. Who knows? It could be amazing. It could be absolutely rubbish. So wait and see.
I don't know what I'm hoping for from it. I'm just interested to see what happens, which is good because their interesting fact isn't even about the robot. It's about the fact the driver is very strong, which I'm sure will make a huge difference. Oh, this one's going to be... There's a lot going on here. The new Gemini.
You can't let... Favourite robot, Lieutenant Commander Data. It's well established that he's an android.
Is that not a subset of robot?
Oh, I feel like they're pushing their luck. Pushing their luck with that one.
I'm sure an android meets all of the definitions of robot and goes beyond them.
Let's not get into it. Let's not get into defining what is a robot and what isn't. There's another podcast for that.
So I would like to draw your attention to the main photo of the robot and the two different setups being shown. On the left, we have an ordinary Gemini, of which 2 can be entered. On the right, we have a Gemini with a huge amount of extra armour added, which can be entered as a single heavyweight.
Ooh.
So they have the option of both going in the same as the one on the left is, without the extra armour, or just putting one in with the extra armour.
Interesting.
So they kind of raised their configuration game quite significantly. And I can't help thinking that Gemini, despite the name, might be better off as 1 than it is as 2. Because at least half the damage it's taken over its lifetime has been from itself.
Yeah, I think that'll be what ends up happening.
I guess it also means that if one of them gets written off in a fight, they can still carry on with the other one.
Yeah. There's lots of rubber mounting for stuff as well, which is interesting. Like, all of that extra armour looks like it's held on with rubber.
Well, I'm sure it's shock mounted, yeah. I think that's a fairly common thing. It's just we don't often get to see it because it's not configurable in this way or to this extreme.
Yeah.
You know, this is configuration where you add literally half the robot's weight in armour.
I don't understand why there are so many holes in the top of these robots.
Holes?
It looks like there's loads of countersunk holes, not all of which have things in them.
It might be that they just whacked the top panel on for the photo and there would normally be bolts in there.
Okay.
I feel like that's often a thing. Just get the photo done, get it all together quickly, because putting it all together, especially if you're doing the batteries as well, has got to be a good half hour to an hour of work.
Yeah. Who knows? Cool. Well, there we go. I hope we do sort of see them as both robots. You know, as usual, I feel like a robot should go in as kind of like what it is. You know, like with a name like Gemini and stuff, like it should be 2 robots. So I hope that they do go into at least one fight as the 2 robots. But the enormous amount of extra armor I think is interesting. I'd be kind of surprised if that armor made it a full weight heavyweight.
I imagine they'd have got it as close as they can. Maybe they've got like a heavier bar or disc that they would also put on in that situation that we're not seeing in these photos.
Yeah.
There's quite a few ways they could configure, I guess.
Yeah.
We have to talk about Malice. But I am just going to state right now that Malice does not have a drum. It has a chunky disc.
No, it has a horizontal drum spinner.
No.
It's clearly stated on the ultimate source of truth in the world, the BattleBots website, horizontal drum spinner.
I've come to terms with Hammersaw to a degree. Because there's just not really a better and neater way of saying it. I think chonky disc is a better way of putting it, with the added bonus of being true. And I love so much about this robot, but I am too much of a Ryan to get over the fact that they're calling this a drum.
I think I think that's fair as a drum. I might describe it as a pancake drum.
And then you'd be wrong. Yeah, you go ahead and do that.
Oh yeah, I would do that. I think if I entered this, I'd went on the BattleBots application thing. You know, type of weapon, pancake drum spinner. It's very clear what's going on. Everyone would know what happened.
What I love is that when you say pancake drum, I think of what it would look like to make a pancake into a weapon. And it would be a skinnier disc than most discs. All the drum stuff aside, I really like this. Horizontal spinners usually have to make that choice between either having a lot of weapon or a compact design. This is managing to have a lot of weapon in a compact design. You look at something like Tombstone, it has to be really long. It's kind of ungainly. With Tombstone, it works. With other designs, it maybe doesn't as well. You look at something like Supernova, for example, a robot that I absolutely love, but the layout of that just doesn't really work because the weapon dominates it in that way. This has got a really nice stance. It looks like it would be really nice to drive while still having a huge amount of inertia in that weapon. I think it's a really neat design.
Yeah, I can see it delivering some pretty hefty blows, for sure.
I'm also a big fan of the wheels, which look very Black Dragon-y.
Looks like they're just like big solid lumps of cast rubber of some description, aren't they?
It looks like the same thing that Copperhead are doing, but it specifically looks like it's been done through whatever process the Black Dragon team use. Unless they're actually supplying wheels to people now, which seems entirely possible.
Who knows? It's another robot that, like, when you look at it, you can sort of see it feels like it's all been designed in 2D. Like it's lots of stacked laser cut panels again. I say again, I forget which robot it was we were talking about. I don't know whether we've edited it out or not. In an earlier recording, we talked about this.
It was Axolotl, and I did not keep that.
Okay, right.
But hey, we'll refer back to things that people haven't heard. That's fine by me. It does make sense that, you know, lots of teams have like Waterjet or Laser Cut people as sponsors. So I guess it makes sense that a lot of people are just designing around that form of manufacture.
Oh yeah, like I'm not saying it's a bad thing that it's done that way. I just think it's just interesting when you can spot it, and interesting to spot the other ways of doing it, because the other ones that stand out as being made out of laser cut parts are like what was that weird drum thing that the Waiachi team made that had like box joints everywhere?
Falcon.
Yeah, that's another one that's sort of like, it's interesting, and it's another sort of approach to sort of, oh, here's a bunch of panels that we're going to stick together. I guess they're all panels that stuck together at the end of the day, but I don't know. I just enjoy seeing how they're all put together and how they're made.
Is Malice using massive through bolts? If you look on the corners.
Yeah, I would
like
guess
almost
so.
as a clamshell. If so, that's bloody awesome. I love that. I'm so glad you've pointed that out.
Yeah, I don't know where else. I mean, you might. I don't know how. Assuming the sort of like that paneling on the front is reasonably thick the whole way down. It looks like it might be. So yeah, I think it's very plausible. There's a bolt all the way through that from top to bottom.
That looks like it might just be a massive sort of plastic spacer block. It's exactly the same sort of design as I've seen on a few Beetles that do a similar thing.
I wonder how much that will bite them when those bolts inevitably bend.
Maybe they're not using like the Wilco pick and mix bolts that we use. Yeah, maybe they've gone for slightly higher quality than that. Although who knows? They don't appear to have a bolt sponsor, so might have had to cut corners there.
Indeed, who knows? I mean, if the BattleBots website is to be trusted, they've done a fair bit of competing. So,
oh yeah, they're very experienced in lighter weight classes.
I'm sure they know what they're doing.
Excellent. Where next?
You want to stop at Rusty, don't you?
I want to stop at Rusty. I want to get off. I want to buy a house and live at Rusty. I want to raise a family at Rusty. I want to be buried at Rusty. This is everything I want. Everything I want in a robot. I've soapboxed about this so much that I'm honestly not sure that I can do it again, but I will try my damnedest. Because this is the kind of thing that a child could draw almost perfectly and just love as a thing to look at. We at work, I almost shouldn't admit this because I know that people from work could listen to this podcast, but I at work was making a display of learning that the children had done around sculptures of robots, and I put a picture of Rusty on it because it is as much art as anything else that we'd been looking at in that topic of work. It has all of the visual appeal in the world. It doesn't look like it should really work. I don't know. I never like to assume that a builder is entering something purely for aesthetics or purely for fun or purely as a sort of joke bot. From what I've heard, it does have some pretty reasonable internals. The weapon as an idea seems like it has some merit. Against the right opponent, I could see that really working. Against most opponents, probably not, but it could do the thing it's meant to do. I honestly don't care whether it flies or flops. I'm just so damn glad that the circumstances around this season have led to robots like this being on TV.
I don't know how I can follow that.
By being equally effusive and saying nothing that disagrees with me.
Well, so my first reaction upon seeing this robot was, what the hell is that? Why is it on BattleBots? However, having looked at the pictures a bit bigger, one, it has tracks, so therefore it's thumbs up from me. I love robots with tracks, so great work. And I think it's growing on me. I think it will. I hope it does well. I hope it does. I mean, well is a relative term.
I hope it achieves whatever the builder wants it to achieve. I don't know what that is. I'm not going to assume, but I hope he gets what he wants out of this experience, because he's brought something that's already given me joy without even seeing it on TV yet.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique looking robot. It's another one that I enjoy the fact that you can just very plainly see how it's built.
Yeah.
I enjoy that. It's sort of like, here's some angles and a big, presumably, like, I imagine the front of it is like an old tank of some description, I would guess, or a drum that's been cut up, and then panels of iron and stuff. Like it's I appreciate it, or whatever metal it's made from.
It's more of a drum than Malice is.
If Rusty just spins on the spot, would you count that as a horizontal drum spinner?
No, unfortunately, in this case, its radius would be greater than its width at that point, wouldn't it?
Would it be a full body drum spinner?
Yeah, why not? Let's go with it.
I don't know if the hat is literally just like a stainless mixing bowl from a supermarket.
It really looks like it comes off of some like old school industrial mixer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like the sort of bakery level mixer.
Yeah, this robot will definitely grow on me, I think. I hope that we get to see lots of it.
The really important thing with it is that I don't think I've ever seen a robot get replicas made of it faster than this has. Pretty much the moment this became public, like, people were making their versions of it, whether that's, a sort of cardboard replica, something in a game, a kind of CAD version, sort of general artwork, or sort of fully functioning ants and beetles. It has really got people going. And if I didn't already know that those people were making those replicas, I would be one of them.
I mean, you could still do it. The existence of other replicas wouldn't detract from yours.
I could, but I don't think I'd do it as well. And I have other dumb things to do. I honestly get as much enjoyment out of sort of seeing other people do it and sort of chipping in on sort of elements of the build. That's where my fun is on it. I feel satisfied enough as is. Who knows, the day may come where I make a replica anyway.
I'm sure you will.
Replicas of robots before. It's not really been my thing, but with Rusty in the world, who knows?
I mean, given the speech that you've just given, surely you need your very own replica of Rusty.
Well, when you put it that way, I feel pressured. No, I have to do my shitty SME first. Talking of which, let's not talk about SME next, because there's one earlier in the alphabet that we want to talk about.
Yes, I'm sure people will be unsurprised to hear that we want to just say how amazing Shatter is. Shatter's, I'm so excited that it's back. I'm so excited to see it again. I'm assuming it still has the Omni wheels. If it doesn't, I'll be so disappointed. It better have those Omni wheels still.
I can't believe that they've managed to make Shatter so much better when it was already amazing. This thing is looking optimized. And I know they do have the kind of behind-the-scenes series. I think I might actually be a bit behind on it, where they've shown sort of how much of a redesign has gone into this internally to make it more structurally sound and more maintainable. Just seeing this fork setup alone.
Yeah.
Obviously trying to make use of the sort of new, flatter, more reliable floor. I think this can pick up wins reliably. As reliably as any hammer is ever going to.
Yeah, I really hope this works properly. I hope that they have the weapon at full power all the time. I remember last time they had a few problems where the weapon was a bit underpowered. So Oh, I'm so excited to see this thing fight again. I love seeing it slide around. I love the aesthetic, the angled thing. I really love the extra reflectivity they've got.
Oh, it looks
so good.
So good. It's really funny going from Rusty to this in terms of the sort of complete opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of visual.
Yeah.
I think so. It isn't just the reflectiveness, it's the way that they've managed to make everything else so matte and so dark. It's just working. And the sort of thick outlines on the edges to break up those panels, they have really, really nailed it.
Yeah, somewhat. Whoever's sort of like doing the aesthetics for this robot, they have good taste. I appreciate it.
Oh, yes. Also appreciate their choice of favourite tool.
Hot cliff. I hadn't spotted that, of course.
And I noticed on the fact they're saying they've got a 200G impact.
Oh,
I don't know how well those words go together as a sentence that makes sense in the realm of physics, but it's a big number.
that's a big number. That's a lot of G's.
When we were talking to Dave Moulds, he was talking about sort of lightening components to better deal with G loads. Now, obviously, this isn't the same kind of loading as he was talking about. He was talking more about sort of being thrown and landing. Do you remember what kind of numbers he was giving as a ballpark? Because I remember him saying sort of like 5-10G.
I think it was in the tens. Yeah, I don't think it was in the 200s.
Because that just gives me a slight sense of scale of what would count as a lot in the sort of heavyweight context. Again, different situations in terms of the way they're being delivered and the way they're impacting the other robot, but that's still big number good.
Big number.
Next up might just be me talking and Sam listening, but I want to talk about Slammo. And I want to talk about Slammo purely so that I can put my cards on the table and say that I really think this is the year that a Danby robot works and works well. I see this thing getting top 32, top 16 reasonably comfortably.
I think that's optimistic. I really want this to work. I want nothing more than for this robot to work. Craig deserves for this robot to work. I think it looks cool. My big problem with it is that it's sponsored by the principal sponsor of the show, and that just makes me nervous. Like, it's just like ripe for things being a bit funky about it. I hope that doesn't happen. Again, like, what I want is for everything to be fine, for that not to influence anything about what's going on. I want everything to be sort of like all above board, thumbs up, and I want it to work, and that would be great. But I'm just worried about if this robot finds itself in any kind of controversy. I'm just a bit worried about what the reaction of the community will be. And if it doesn't work, I'd be really worried about what everyone's reaction will be as well. Like, I want it to work. I want it to do well.
Like with Retuncti and our audience, I trust just 100% implicitly that there will be no preferential treatment towards this robot because it shares a sponsor with the show. So I can be certain that is not something that's going to happen. But as you say, if it does well, if it looks like it's getting slightly easier or anything, I can see people getting itchy about it. And that's a shame, but that's not going to detract from me wanting it to succeed. Because I want Craig to succeed more than anything.
Yeah.
You say it's optimistic. I'm basing it on a lot of things that Craig has said. So I guess you could take that with a pinch of salt. But looking at the amount of testing that he's been able to do on this, yeah, he's been basically just like driving this off the back of his truck multiple times to sort of give it some impact testing. He's got, I think, 3 separate frames, a bunch of different weapon setups, and most importantly, someone else did the electronics. His words, not ours. Can't remember where they were. I'll try and quote them in the show notes, but it might be quite hard to find. But yeah, I think it's a very pragmatic design. It's a design that he's been working with for a long time. You know, this comes from one of his older amp weights. It's a unique machine in itself in terms of what it's trying to do. It ticks pretty much every box for me. I would be much happier if it weren't under the sponsorship it is, but at the same time, I cannot blame him for, you know, working with the people that will fund his hobby and help him build the machine that he wants to build.
Yeah.
So yeah, my cards are now on the table.
Excellent. I hope it works.
Oh, as always. As always.
Now, I'm given to understand that you're also something of a fan of Smee. Sorry, Smee.
I am a fan of the beetle weight called Smee. I'm unsure about this version. I'm so glad that we have it, first of all. I am really glad that they've been able to, get onto BattleBots with this design, been able to get it built and all of that. I think there must have been a lot of challenges to overcome in doing that. Having seen a lot of their posts about the build, they've got some really sort of cool build techniques being used in places that other people tend not to use them. So they've got like 3D printed gears on the sort of rear section of drive as a sort of intentional, softer failure point, which I think is really interesting. Lots of other things that I sort of can't bring to mind right now. I just don't like the whole hingy wedge thing. I think that's kind of ruining what I love about Smee, which is that it's super wide and ungainly. But super strong at the same time and, basically impenetrable.
Does this have an active weapon? Are those weird little things in the corners? Are they little spinners?
Yeah, this is BattleBots. It has an active weapon.
Yeah.
It has undercutters on each side. So Smee is usually a weaponless wedge that is very, very wide. I'm attempting to emulate it. It's going to be super fun and impossible to test. And it basically succeeds by being something that no one can really get around to the rear of. It's just so damn wide that you can't get around it. And they've over time have developed fantastic setups for verticals as well. It's a really effective machine that's very difficult to plan for. Obviously, they had to add active weapons. I understand that. I would have liked to see a completely straight Smee with the undercutters. The undercutters are the sensible choice. And the wraparound thing is a neat concept in terms of drive up to them, wrap around them, bring both of the undercutters into a place where they don't want to get hit. So they're basically being the robot you can't get around but can get around you. The concept is really cool. I don't know, I just like the pure silliness of the original so much. I have a feeling the moment it gets into a fight, I'm going to be completely converted and I'm going to be claiming this conversation never happened. That's the way it usually goes.
Indeed.
The thing I'm currently enjoying most is something that Mr. Psycho Mike pointed out, which is that there doesn't seem to be an official spelling of this robot's name. They seem to just throw however many E's they want on.
How can you have, it's one of those situations where, how can you have a situation where there's not a canonical number of E's? It just shows the way that my brain works. Yeah, it's spelt two different ways on that webpage.
How many E's have they put in the title? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I make 18 on the title.
There's 18 on the robot name and there's 22 on the team name.
And then in the interesting fact, they've got... I can't even count, it's too small. Okay, they seem to have been consistent on the fact as well.
No,
on the robot...
The fact has 16.
Okay, and then on the robot, how many have they got?
The robot has 18 E's. The team name has 22. The interesting fact spells it with 16 E's. And the website... Give me a sec to count them.
I count 19 on the wedge, and far more than that on the shirt.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, well, is that what you mean? But on the robot, sorry, because I'm not counting them manually. I'm pasting them into a thing that I can just do a selection on. So,
of course,
who knows? Yes, too many E's,
or alternatively, not enough E's. But no, this seems like the final port of call for the let's make things big club in BattleBots. We've got Huge, we've got Mammoth, we've got Smee. Unless someone's going to come in with something insanely tall and narrow and short, I feel like we've now covered the main bases.
Is this the Galaxy Brain?
I feel like that might still be to come.
I look forward to it.
Galaxy Brain would be something like Tower of Power, which is a robot you won't remember. It's basically a very, very tall forklift.
Well.
Anyway, in the interest of pacing, we shall move on. I assume there was another one we wanted to talk about.
There's Tantrum.
So yeah, Tantrum next. Then we'll do the big deal. The big deal, even.
I don't know that there's much to say about Tantrum. I don't remember if it worked particularly well last time. I feel like I've seen a video of the weapon like this doing the punchy thing. And I'm excited to see it again on BattleBots, I think.
Tantrum we've seen working in its kind of King of Bots form as boxing champion. And it worked well there. The main thing they seemed to change from the 2019 BattleBots version was that they added a sort of differently shaped wedge, a much sort of longer, shallower wedge, and also a fork setup, both of which seemed to work pretty well. The forks especially had a little kind of hook at the top to get something perfectly positioned for where the sort of end of the travel on the weapon was, and that was excellent. That really hit things hard, it really threw them, and it really looked good doing it. The trailer does show them using the weapon in that mode. So it seems like it's going to work for at least one hit.
Excellent.
And that's almost all I need. Yeah. Again, it's one of those things where it's quite a sort of complicated, almost convoluted idea. This is maybe the same is true of SME, actually, as well. It only needs to work once to prove itself, and everything from there is just gravy. How do you feel about the self-writing setup?
Well, the 2 arms with the flamethrowers. Strongly in favour.
I don't want to like it, but I can't help myself.
Oh, I love it. This robot, you're talking about like Rusty ticking all the boxes for you. Like this is ticking them for me, man. It's got a needlessly complicated weapon that I think if it works, I'll be really happy. It's similar to stupid ideas that I've had, so I'm excited to see that going. And it's got flamethrowers.
It's like so pointlessly aesthetic. But I was when we recorded before, I don't think we put it in the edit, we were talking about Endgame, and I was talking about how I didn't like how sort of skinny and understated their self-writing setup was compared to the sunglasses they had before. And now here I am criticising this self-writing setup for being too in your face and aesthetic and visual.
I think it's great. I think they've nailed the aesthetic for this. I think without those arms, this would be a much more boring looking robot. I think it needs them to sort of really sell it.
Yeah, it needs the height as much as anything, doesn't it? Especially with this wedge setup on, which looks... I don't know what it looks like. It's just weird. Although pragmatic and presumably effective. Yeah. All of my excitement for Tantrum. I've liked every single version of it. And this is the one that looks like it's going to, function as intended. Which is a beautiful thing.
Most excellent.
Where next?
I believe we're going to finish off with the big deal.
I could quickly talk about Tracer as well, but...
What is there to say about Tracer?
The mini-bot is really cool.
Tell me about the mini-bot.
Okay, so Tracer. This kind of came out of nowhere as a sort of second wave robot. I can't say I know much about the team. There was a podcast about them that I just didn't ever get around to listening to. And they've come in with kind of a weird spin on basically everything. So the construction of the main robot, it's a little bit monsoony in a sense, but also different in that it's kind of got this single axle going through the weapon and everything else that everything kind of articulates off of. I don't know what the pros and cons of that necessarily are, but that's sort of a unique and interesting thing. And, it makes it more interesting than your average vert. But then the mini-bot, this thing is ridiculously cool. So the setup is, they call it a cam lifter. Those forks get under something and are then rotated to just lift it off the floor. Just a little bit off the floor. Just enough.
Okay. That's definitely falls into the camp of, if that works even once, I'll be very happy.
Exactly. They've shown a test video of it going up against against another heavyweight, showing that it has the power to lift it. And of course, that heavyweight is set still. And it can get under there and do it. And it takes a little while. It does seem like the kind of thing that in the heat of battle probably isn't going to work. But if it does, that is just a huge win for everyone involved. It's funny, we sort of had ideas about a similar kind of mini-bot for your move. We wanted a real sort of nuisance lifter that would be able to just get another Beetle's wheels off of the ground. And this is clearly a very neat and weight-efficient way of doing that.
Yeah.
Better than anything we would have come up with.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you sort of see it and go, that is very clever, and I would never have thought of it. But as soon as you see it, you go, that's obvious in retrospect as a way of doing it.
I mean, I wouldn't even say that for this one. This is so far out of left field. But I see what you mean as a general point, for sure. So yeah, I'm just excited for that little bit of it. The rest of it, I can kind of take or leave. But again, it's got some interesting concepts behind it. And that's always nice to see. Innovation in an unexpected place.
If Tracer wins and does well, I'm concerned that people are going to think that I've got a tattoo based on Tracer, and I want to make it really clear that my tattoo predates Tracer.
Hey, maybe you want to retract that statement. Maybe that'll be the in thing.
No.
I still don't understand your tattoo, but I like it. And I'm not expecting you to explain it, by the way. I would never ask people to do that. I know how annoying that is.
It is what it is.
Right then, last robot. Bloody BattlBot's website have moved its place in the list. So when we started doing this, it was under T. Now they've moved it to B, where it belongs. And that is the big deal. And I imagine that you're confused why I'm so impressed by it.
What could you... Like, it looks like it's missing its 2 front wheels. What... Like... Why? Explain. Justify this to me. Why is this such a great robot?
Because it's a really cool lifter. And I like lifters. And it has a funny name. And it's one of the robots that broke the arena at Robot Ruckus and caused the whole sort of final part of the heavyweight competition to be cancelled. It's quick. It's aggressive. It's got that kind of letterbox lifter that I bloody love. The kind of thing we saw on Grab Crab. Which, just when it works, it really works. And it's so beautifully simple. It's just a shape. No clever mechanism, just a shape that lifts things up and turns them over reliably.
Geometry.
Yeah, it is a triumph of geometry. You've got something like Slammo, which has a really cool mechanism to grab and then lift. It's the sort of thing we saw on Greedy Snake first. It's really cool. Claw Viper, I think, is doing the same. That's really cool in its own right. But when you can do the same thing with less stuff, that's always really cool to see. And I really hope they put this up against another robot that does the same thing, up against, say, Claw Viper or... Slammo maybe less so because they're slightly different shapes, but Claw Viper certainly. We would have had the Krusty Grab were it not for the sort of second wave of rope. I could just say coronavirus. People know what that is. If it weren't for pandemic, we would have had another very similar robot, and I would love to see those two fight again. Yeah, control bots are good. My energy has finally dwindled. That's all you're getting.
Fair enough. Well, I look forward to seeing all of the robots, even the ones we've not talked about.
And here ends another episode of Ryan Tells Sam to Like Things.
I look forward to the surprise entry from Expulsion.